Hey, it's the publisher here, Mr. Kelly Cole. Listen, if you are a former professional athlete, if you are a former college athlete or sports coach, and you're looking to launch your speaking career, let me tell you, you need a book. If you're already out there speaking and you want to track more high-paid speaking engagements, you need a book. It's not about creating more content to post on social media. It's not about recording a bunch of videos. It's not about doing more podcasts. The number one secret to attracting more high-paid speaking engagements or even launching your speaking career is a book. Hey, I'm the publisher, Mr. Kelly Cole, and I help former athletes and sports coaches create best-selling books in 30 days to launch their speaking career, even if they hate writing and don't know where to start. So for the first time ever, I've created a free case study video that will not only show you how to write a book from scratch in as little as 30 days and become a best-selling author, it will also show you how to attract more high-paid speaking engagements. Now, to check out this free case study video, click the link that says learn more or go to booksforathletes.com. Real quick before you go, do not go if you're not a former athlete or sports coach, because you won't find any value in what I'm about to share. And don't go if your book is already out and already on Amazon. You won't find any value in what I share over there. But if you are a former athlete or sports coach, know that you need a book, or already out there speaking and you want to launch your speaking career, go check out that link now. Writing a book is not as hard as you think. It doesn't even matter if you don't know where to start. My case study video will show you how to start and get it done and onto the bestsellers list. So go now.
Welcome to the Books for Athletes podcast with your host, the publisher, Mr. Kelly Cole. Mr. Cole, a former athlete and best-selling author himself, has set out to take you behind the scenes of some of sports' forgotten heroes. He sits down with former professional athletes, college athletes, and sports coaches as they share stories of triumph, defeat, dedication, and perseverance. Here's Kelly.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Books for Athletes podcast. Today we got a special guest. I'm not going to go through all his AKAs, but I'm going to let him introduce himself. Man, welcome to the show, brother. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show. And I'm just happy to be here.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. So your book, Manic On Fire, Burning from the Inside Out, Tyrone Evans, aka Monster Tarver.
Yes, sir.
Good
Yes,
stuff.
sir.
So in the book, you talk about being the son of a preacher. Tell us a little bit about that and about your upbringing growing up.
Sure. So my mother was a minister, and I used that as one of my taglines, my catchphrases when I was with WWE: son of a preacher and a prize fighter, because my father was a pro boxer. And it's funny. A lot of people were confused because they didn't realize that the preacher was my mother until I explained it, and people were surprised when I explained to them. Like, wait, mom was the preacher? um, my parents had a very, very tight knit family, very strict upbringing, very close family. My parents were very much disciplinarians, old school Black parents, and we're very, very close, and we're still very close to this day. Parents are still alive and kicking, still married after over 40 years, and I'm proud of them, very, very proud of them. And I use everything that they taught me, I use today, and I used all of that knowledge and all of those lessons in raising my children and doing the best I could for my children, and seeing the work ethic of that, and then, continuing on from there. But yeah, it was very, very spiritual family. My parents taught us a lot. We were always in church at points 2 or 3 times a week. I was listening to gospel music. It was a crazy, tough, amazing life. My parents worked very hard to provide for us.
That's good, man. So what are one of the bigger lessons that your parents taught you that you apply to raising your kids?
Um, respect and discipline, because the most important thing that you can teach your children to do is to respect you. And it's a partnership when raising your children, but it's a partnership that evolves over time as they get older, right? So when I was raising my children when they were younger, it was less of a partnership, but it was still a partnership and more of, I'm the parent, you follow my rules, you do what I say, because this is one of those things where I know the answers to I know the answers to your questions because I've lived them. So let me teach you not to get the wrong answers. And then it gets to a point where it's okay, now you're old enough to understand some of the questions. Now let you get some of the questions wrong, but still protect you from some of the bigger ones. And it gets to a point where it's like, all right, I've taught you enough. Now you understand that when you get some of the big ones wrong, you have a baseline to come back to. And then that's the point where it becomes more of a partnership, and with my children, they I was very, very good with teaching them discipline and teaching them respect and self-respect, respect of their elders, um, and just different techniques and different things I did with my children, and it worked. Just little things like the way they addressed me. I had made them address me a certain way, and when they were younger, and it no matter what was going on, how mad, no matter what it was, they had to address me a certain way when they were. It was almost military kind of. But I always did love. And every time I disciplined my children, whether it was a butt whooping or a spanking, whatever, I always made sure I hugged them and like showed them affection afterwards. Like I never let that just rest on its own. And then they're not understanding why I had to do that. Then it turns into resentment, misunderstanding. I always made sure I gave them an equal amount of affection, after the discipline. So they understood this is why daddy had to do this. And it worked. It worked. And very proud of you and grateful to my parents.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So growing up like in high school, or when did you start playing sports and what was the first sport that you played?
Oh, oh man, like late elementary school. I think that's a good question. I think the first sport I ever actually did was probably track and field, organized. I think it was track and field. Um, my parents got us into these, uh, well, it was a track meet, but it was also like not like Olympics, but like it's got a bunch of games, a bunch of different events.
Yeah.
And it was called the Hershey something, Hershey track and field events, Hershey something. But we ran in the track and field portion. And I remember when I was in, I don't know, sixth grade or seventh grade, um, I ran the 200-meter dash, I believe it was, and I qualified to the state championships. And we drove all the way to Columbus, Ohio, and then I placed in the state championships and it's kind of like an AAU sort of kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just can't remember. It was Hershey something. Hershey meaning as in like Hershey, Pennsylvania, Hershey, the candy. I guess they were a sponsor of it. I think so. And yeah, I qualified for the state championships and went to the state championships and placed and qualified for the nationals. And there was no way that we were going to do that. But
Mhm.
and then from there, I got into basketball. Just fell in love with basketball. And my mother was a sprinter in high school, so she always pushed us. Parents gave us options, and sports and getting out and being active was a huge thing. That was a big, big, big deal. But probably track and field was my first organized sport, and
Gotcha.
then basketball, and then boxing, and then later on, I had to beg my mother to let me play football.
What grade was that? Did you play football?
Eighth grade was my first year playing football. Eighth grade. So I remember my little brother was always bigger than I was. I was a beanpole. I was tall and skinny, but I was lightning fast. I was really, really fast because I was a natural sprinter. And my little brother was like a tank. And so they let him play football. They tried to let him play youth football, but he was too big. So and we both wanted to play or pee wee football or youth football. We call it in Ohio pee wee football.
Yeah.
Um, we were too big because we were big for our age. Our father's 6'8", 300 pounds. You know, he was so we naturally were big kids, and we had to wait. Brother played seventh grade, and I begged my mother to let me play football. She would not. She did not want me to play. And I literally had to beg her to let me play in eighth grade and promise her I would not get hurt because she was so afraid I was going to get hurt. And I didn't. But yes, my first official year of playing football was eighth grade.
Wow. And so when you got to college, what sports did you play in college?
So I
I mean,
played.
high school. I'm sorry. No,
No,
I'll
okay,
skip high school. What sports did you play in high school? I'm sorry.
all of them, literally all of them. So I played football, basketball. I was unofficially on the wrestling team at the same time, and I ran track.
No, no. And then where did you go to college and what did you play in college?
So I went to the college story is crazy because I ended up going to a branch of Ohio University in Zanesville, Ohio, which is like Southern Ohio. In Ohio, we have, I don't know, they don't really seem to have them anywhere else in any other states that I know of. But in Ohio, we have branches of all of the major Division I colleges around the state. And these would be kind of the equivalent to NAIA schools or even
Yeah.
junior colleges, kind of. And I played basketball at a branch of Ohio University in Zanesville. And it was all a part of Ohio University as far as the greater umbrella, but there were multiple branches. And I had a couple of football scholarship offers, or football scholarship opportunities, put it that way. I'm going to say offers, opportunities. My grades were really bad in high school. And just high school was a horrible experience for me. And instead of persevering, I rebelled. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get in trouble with law. I didn't get in trouble with school. I hated my high school and I rebelled because it wasn't the school that I wanted to go to, which was terrible. It was a terrible thing for me to do, and it cost me. But I ended up going to this branch of Ohio U to get my grades up so I could go to the University of Akron, which was one of the last two remaining schools that were willing to give me a scholarship. The other being Kent State University to play football, full scholarship to play football. But I had to get my grades up and then do what back then was called a Proposition 48, where you go for a semester, get your grades up, then they give you a scholarship. But you have to pay for your own school for a semester.
Mm.
I don't think they do that anymore. And while I was in college on the basketball team at Ohio University in Zanesville, I conceived my oldest child and ended up leaving school to go back home to be with her mother and take care of her mother and take care of our incoming child. And thus the nightmare began.
Let's talk about that nightmare. Because believe it or not, I went to University of Virginia in
Mm.
Wise, Virginia. So I know
Oh,
about those branches.
okay, yeah.
So I did the same thing and played football. Nine
Okay.
months later, left football. 9 months later, had my son Aaron Cole, which you know of. So yeah, I know all about it.
Yeah,
Talk about that nightmare. Let's talk to some people.
yeah. And that's cool. Yeah, I forgot you told me that, man. Yeah, he's dope too, man.
Appreciate it,
That's,
brother.
that's, that's super cool, man. That is really, really cool. Shout out there in Cove. That's dope, man. That's dope. Shout out to your family.
Appreciate it.
Uh, yeah, man. So I my oldest daughter's mother had some issues with substance abuse. And I don't really want to, dive too deep into that as far as her substance abuse out of respect for her and her family. And her family and I have become family over the past, I met her in 96 and we've been through hell and high water together, her family and I since.
Yeah,
And now like we're family. They're like my second parents. Her whole family is my family, and I love those people very much. But yeah, she had some substance abuse issues, and at a young age, she didn't know how to process and deal with them, and she ended up projecting them on me. And I was the little church boy preacher's kid, and she was running the streets with the wrong crowd, and it just we didn't mix very well, but we've created beautiful children. And I tried to be in a relationship with her. I tried to make it work. Um, And it wasn't all bad, but it was pretty tough. And, we conceived our oldest child, who is now married and has her own child, and she's doing well. And I ended up leaving and met my first wife. But yeah, it was tough. That first almost 3 years was a lot of fights, a lot of arguments, a lot of police being called, a lot of abuse. And, these are things that I endured. A lot of physical abuse, a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of things that I endured uh, in that relationship at 19 years old, trying to create or recreate what I saw my parents thrive in marriage. And I never saw any like abuse or anything about my parents. I never experienced it, so it was new to me. My parents they had a hard life, but they were never abusive to each other. So I didn't know what this was, and yeah, I tried, and it drove me crazy. Like drove me suicidal. Like it was tough.
Definitely understand that, man. So what when did you become a pro? Like what sport or what did you become a professional athlete? Was it wrestling first or was you a boxer? What was it?
It was wrestling first. So in middle school, actually elementary school, now I think about it. Elementary school, my father, so he went to in '83, he went to camp with the Denver Broncos and blew out his knee. And he had an opportunity to become a part of the full-time roster. And I remember as a kid, I used to always tell people my dad played for the Broncos, and then my mother corrected me. She's like, "No, he went to camp for the Broncos." I'm like, I didn't get that. I was a kid. I didn't know,
Right.
But yeah, it was John Elway's rookie year was the year he was at camp,
Wow.
and so as a kid, I didn't know the difference. But now I know the difference, which still, is impressive nonetheless. He blew out his knee and then got into boxing, and Mike Tyson sparring partner, which every time I tell that story, I'm so impressed with my father to go from the pinnacle of one pro sport to the pinnacle of another one in less than 10 years. Like that's crazy to me. And so we watched him do that while working 3 jobs around the clock to take care of, his family. And we just wanted to be just like our dad. He was our hero. So my little brother and I begged him to let us box. So he didn't want us to, but he let us, and he would train us and take us to practice with him every day after school, after practice. And so we're playing sports in school and boxing and doing homework and all of that. But eventually, as I got to high school, I started focusing more on trying to get into college. And when all of that didn't work out, we were all, and throughout all of that, we were always big wrestling fans. We watched wrestling growing up. I never thought that I'd be a wrestler. We were fans. And then 2004, yeah, 2003, no, 2000, no, 2002, actually. 2002, at the very end of my first marriage, I considered getting into pro wrestling because that's when I realized there was independent wrestling. I thought it was just WWF and that was it. I didn't know.
Mhm.
And WCW, I didn't, I was made aware that there was independent wrestling and there were companies in Akron, Ohio, where I was living. I was like, wait, really? And I considered getting into it, and I never did. And divorce happened, and then it sidetracked me. And then after my first divorce happened in 2004, I was still playing semi-pro football, trying to go pro in football, and just ended up getting into wrestling, and then became a professional wrestler. Then
Yo, what up? It's your girl JC, and listen, I have to send a special shout out to my guy, Mr. Kelly Cole, and the entire team at Publishing Advantage Group and Books for Athletes. They took so great care of me to the point that I know I'm the pickiest person. This book was supposed to have been finished last summer. However, there were some details that I needed to make sure that the book had because my audience needed it. And, when it comes down to feeding and serving the people, especially as a former athlete and telling your story, you cannot be selfish with the material and give it away. And they worked with me from the time of my thought process to the time of conception, all the way down to now, top 20 hot release best-selling author on Amazon in 24 hours. Listen, if you're an athlete, you have a story to tell, and you don't know how to put it in book form just yet, don't worry, you're not alone, okay? Hit my guy, Mr. Kelly Cole, and tell him what you're trying to do, and I promise you he gonna get you right, all right? And of course, check me out on Amazon after the season. Shout out to the Books for Athletes family.
So how did you break into the WWE? There's a kid that has that dream. How did you do it? How did you go from playing semi-pro football trying to go to the NFL to actually making it into the WWE?
Only God, man. This is a crazy story. So I had 2004. I started wrestling, and I was still playing football, semi-pro football, all the way up until 2006. And I played my last football game in 2006. I was also trying to play arena football as well. Then I went full time in pro wrestling, independent wrestling. That is traveling all around the Ohio Valley area, like from as far as Philly to all of Pennsylvania to Kentucky to Michigan to Nebraska, not Nebraska, Wisconsin, and like all of those states in that kind of Midwest area. I was traveling every weekend, driving, and it was the dream, driving all across country for less than $100 per match. But I remembered I was at a show in Akron, and there was a guy who he would always ask me. He was like, "Have you ever talked to Vince McMahon?" So I'm like, "No, I've never. I never wouldn't dream of it. I'd love to go to WWE. It just didn't seem feasible. Like the NFL. What I'm saying, it just didn't seem possible." And he's like, "You should. I think you should really go. Like, you should really, really go." And he kept saying that to me every time I saw him. I'm like, "How would I get there?" Then I started seeing fellow wrestlers that I knew in the Cleveland area, from the Cleveland, uh, getting placements on their Friday Night SmackDown or Monday Night Raw as extra talent. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's possible? Okay, then how do I do that? So then um, one night, if I remember the story correctly, the same guy told me to go up to New York, Rochester, New York. This is December 18th in 2007. And he said, go up to Rochester, New York. They need extra talent for a storyline that was supposed to be between, if I remember correctly, JBL and Chris Jericho. They need big guys. And so I said, okay, how do I do that? He said, just go. I said, okay. So, and he was supposed to be there as an extra talent. And so I told a good friend of mine, I had just went through a pretty big controversial situation in the wrestling scene in Cleveland at that time. And a good friend of mine, his name is Drew. He was like, "I'm going to help you. You got talent. I'm going to help you. Like you have too much talent to just fall to the wayside because of this stupid situation." And my two other friends, Josh and Lamont, who trained me, those brothers, they trained me, and they believed in me. They were like the only people that believed in me. And my friend Drew was like, we need to get you into these big, we called them super indie, like the big independent companies. We got to get you into these companies. Like, you got too much to offer. So I came to him. I'm like, yo, I think I might have a chance. And I told him, he's like, we're driving. I'm driving you there. I'm driving you there tomorrow morning. I'm like, no. He said, yes, I'm driving you. So I remember I went to my supervisor. I was working at a group home overnight. And I went to my supervisor, who was a big wrestling fan that I didn't know. And I told him, I have an opportunity to be an extra talent on Friday Night SmackDown. I don't know exactly. He was like, go, I'll work your shift. Go. I'm like, wait, what? He said, go. I will work your shift. This is a once in a lifetime. I'll never forget that. I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? He's like, I'll come in and work your shift. He said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm like, because he knew I was a wrestler. I was like, okay. So I'll never forget. We got up. My friend Drew picked me up. We drove to his house. He was living in Youngstown, Ohio, which is on the border of Pennsylvania and Ohio, and a little bit closer to Rochester. They made the drive not as bad. And we got up at 5 a.m, drove to Rochester, New York, walked into and found the arena. And when we got there, there were a couple other talents I knew from my time in wrestling in Ohio. And I saw them. I'm like, oh, so I'm like, great, thank God, there's people there I know. And I walked into the arena. I wasn't booked. I wasn't scheduled. Nobody even knew who I was. I just walked right in. And that is unheard of. You cannot get into a WWE arena. It's not possible. Because I tried it one other time and they kicked me out. So, like, it's not possible. And I walked in and walked out with a contract.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
So when you walked in, what happened? You gotta give us the rest of that. So you walk in,
yeah.
What happened?
So Drew and I, he was a referee. We walk in and we walked in with one of the other guys that we knew. Thank God, he's still there. His name is Corey Graves. He's a commentator now. But And thank God he was there because he helped. He was like, he like gave me the runaround, like, you do this, do this, do that, do that, do that. Um, Avoid this. Like, he really helped me that day, big time. So I'm grateful for Corey Graves. And so I followed all his directions. I'm like, all right, and he told us where to go. So we went to Extra Talent. I'd never heard of it. So we're following him. He said, follow us to Extra Talent, put your stuff here, go sit here. Don't say anything. Don't, because Extra Talent, you have to be present but quiet. Do not get in anybody's way. And so I listened to every direction. And he's like, all right, now it's time to go to the ring. So we got dressed, went to the ring, stood by the ring, and we were talking. And there was a gentleman there. His name was Mike. That's funny. I never remember his name. Now I remember his name. His name was Mike Tolar. And he was from Cleveland, and he was best friends with Dolph Ziggler. And I never met Mike before, but he was like, him and Dolph Ziggler went to high school together, apparently, in Cleveland. And he and I were standing there talking, struck up a conversation. We're both from Cleveland and all of that. And then all of a sudden, Jamie Noble, who was like I guess you call him a legend. He's been wrestling for a long time. He's been on TV for years. He was a great wrestler too. He just plucked me out of the crowd. There was about 20 or so wrestlers standing, Extra Talent wrestlers, waiting to be seen or whatever. And I'm standing there. And all I remember is I had on this black and white camo thermal. That's, that's what I had on. And apparently it made me stand out. So Jamie Noble walks up. He's in the ring. And he's there to evaluate the Extra Talent. So he walks up to me, and the guy I was with named Mike. He goes, "You two, get in the ring." Like, that's how he actually talks. Like, "You two, get in the ring." Oh, okay. So I get in the ring. He's like, "All right, 5 minutes. Let me see what you got." So I'm like, okay. So we just went from having a conversation to having an impromptu match right there. And I was about 4 years in. I had about 4 years of experience. I don't know how much experience he had, but he was a much better wrestler. And there were talent, like all of the talent, WWE talent would just, and I learned because I became the WWE talent. Pre-show, they just walk in with their coffees or whatever and just sit and chill in the arena or whatever. And I would like run the stadium steps and exercise and all of that. But they would sit and look at the Extra Talent and whatever and make jokes, whatever. So I remember I'm in the ring and they're heckling me. So I'm like getting loud and obnoxious. And I remember seeing Edge, and I remember seeing Mark Henry and a few other people in particular. I remember seeing those two in particular because, I'm like, and I'm tripping like, Edge, Mark Henry, like, I'm, bugging out. Mm-hmm. So they start heckling and I start trash talking, like screaming at them. I'm beating this dude down, trash talking. And they're all like, what? Okay. So, because that's, you don't do that. Like, they heckle you, you just shut up, you have your match. I didn't know anything, so I'm like, trash talking, whatever, like they're the crowd. And we finished the match, and it's freezing cold because they had those big dock doors open. Bro, so cold. It was so cold. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget how cold it was. So I remember we finished the match, we get out the ring, and I'm standing next to my friend Drew, and he's looking at me like, you just had a match. I'm like, I know. Like, I'm tripping. I'm thinking that would have been enough, right? I get a tap on the shoulder, and it's one of the talent relations guys. And he taps me and says, "Hey, Johnny wants to see you." I'm like, Johnny? This is John Laurinaitis, who was the head of talent. He was the president of talent relations then. And, now his name is wrapped up in the controversy with Mr. Man and all of that. But he actually hired me and fired me, essentially. But he hired me. And I never had a bad relationship. Or Vince. I had a great relationship with Vince, ironically enough. But so the guy, his name was Mark, the talent relations guy, he takes me back and we walk down this long corridor. I never forget this long corridor. And I sit, and he sits me in a chair, and I'm looking into this office, the small office, and the door's open. And there's John Laurinaitis sitting there on the phone. And I'm thinking, holy crap, that's Johnny Ace, wrestling name. And I'm like bugging out, man, like nervous, like excited. And I couldn't breathe because I had just finished wrestling. It was like probably in the 20s, 30s outside, snow everywhere. And, the temperature wasn't that different on the inside of the arena because there was no heat and all of the doors are open. So I'm struggling to catch my breath. Like I'm dizzy, like I'm literally dizzy. I'm trying to calm myself down, trying to catch my breath. I look up, and who was walking down the hallway first? Batista. Batista was walking down the hallway first, and I greet Batista, and I'm like, oh, man, I'm like, just nervous. He walks into the office. I look up again, And Vince McMahon himself is walking down the hallway. So I stand up, stop him in his track, shake his hand, and he walks in the office. And the last one was the Undertaker. And these are things I talked about in the book. And I think they appreciated that I stood up and stopped them in the tracks and shook their hand instead of cowering to them. And I didn't know any better. I just did what I was trained to do. And from there, Johnny, we talked, and I went in the office, and he basically was just saying, he already did research on me and found out, some things about me, and was curious about some things about me, and wanted to send me to OVW, which was in Louisville, Kentucky, which was developmental for WWE. And I was just like, what? I was so surprised. And then I'll never forget, I went out and told my friend Drew, and we found a little corner in the arena, and we sat and we cried. Like, we literally cried. And we just hugged. He was like, you did it. He just kept saying, you did it. You did it. Like, you did it. I'm like, I can't believe this. And we just cried. Like, I'll never forget that. And then I went home back to Ohio, and there was these message boards online, because this is before Facebook, and this is MySpace era, but this is before Facebook, and I think YouTube was just becoming a thing, definitely before Instagram and Twitter. And there was all these message boards that came up reports that I was backstage, and this was right after a big controversy I had in Cleveland, and it was just so much conversation. Like, it was crazy. Like, it was crazy.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Tyler Campbell, and I am the author of The Ball Came Out, Life on the Other Side of the Field, brought to you by none other than the Publishing Advantage Group, Kelly Cole, and the entire team. Let me tell y'all something about them. Listen, they are there to help you. They really want to see you win. They want to help you get that message out. And collectively, as a team, you never feel like you're alone. There's no such thing as a bad question. They know the industry so well that they help you convey the message that will feed the masses of individuals that you come across. My book is number 2 new release book on Amazon already, and it's already an Amazon bestseller. I hadn't even been a full week yet. All right. These individuals know what they know about the industry, and they share it with you. Right. And they only want to see you win. You're handled with care. Make your book a bestseller today and go with the Publishing Advantage Group. They want nothing but the best for you.
Wow. Powerful story. They're going to have to get the book to get the rest of the story.
Yeah.
I always ask people this, especially, being raised by a preacher who's your mom, and having that upbringing. When did you develop a relationship with Christ yourself? Because it's one thing to be raised. When did you develop a relationship yourself?
So I did. I was introduced to Christ as a kid. But it's one of those things, and I've used this analogy, whereas you see your next door neighbor every day, you don't really know him. You know what I mean? I would probably say 2010, to be honest, because my whole life I've been a believer my entire life, and I've walked back and forth away and back and away and back from the faith, and struggled and been through all types of hell, put myself through all types of hell, but I didn't really have that intimate relationship on my own. I had what my parents were teaching me, which is what they were supposed to do, which is why I developed one of my own, because of my parents. And 2010, 2008, I got my contract, and I moved here to Florida, and it was tough, very tough. And during that time, I met my second wife, and I remember one of the positive things, she did some positive things, but she did a lot of negative. One of the positive things she did was that she wanted me to go to church with her, and I wasn't ready to go back to church at the time. And so she kind of she was consistent. So I'm like, all right, I'll go to church. So we started going to her church, and it wasn't a good fit. Then we found the church that we both eventually ended up going to, and I became very good friends with the pastor, who I still go to that church to this day. And during that time, during that time period, I fell in love with the church. That was when I fell in love. That's when I discovered Christian hip hop, and fell in love with it. And I had a kind of a spiritual awakening, and started really digging into Christian hip hop. That was when I discovered God Over Money and fell in love with God Over Money, and just, I knew then that's where I wanted to be. 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, ironically enough. And um, right after that, I fell under a horrible spiritual attack. Right before I debuted on TV, and it was kind of a game changer for me as well. And then everything else happened after that. But fast forward to about 2018 was when 2016, I started really, really discovering like the word, like getting into the word, like into like reading the Bible. And then, through some other influences. And then in 2018, for the first time I read the Bible through and through. I just said, all right, I want to know the Bible. And I read it through and through all the way. And I consulted with a few people, and I was like, how do I do this? Because it was intimidating. I'm like, it's daunting. You think you read the entire Bible? No, it's actually not. Just take your time. And I was told most people start in the Gospels, read the New Testament first, then go back and read the Old Testament, and then just if just do it again. So I did it. It took me a couple months, and when I did, oh my goodness, my eyes were open. I was changed. It was like, holy, I thought I knew God. I didn't really know God. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so I did it again, and then did it again. And I remember seeing a video on not TikTok, Instagram or something like that at that time period, and it said it's something in the video said it's impossible to hear or read the word and it not affect you or change you. Man, is that true? Man, is that true? Oh my goodness! Like I reading that Bible, it changed me. Like I was like, it affected me. It was anyone. It doesn't matter, like anybody. It doesn't matter who you are. If you read the Bible all the way through, it will change you. But yeah, that's the cliff notes.
Got it. Got it. So when did you start rapping? You said you discovered Christian hip hop. When did you start actually rapping and making music?
96, 97, 96, 97. Yeah, I've been for a very, very, very long time. So I started recording with the group. We had this little group in the town. I grew up in Kent, Ohio, and we had this group. We were HTC was the name of the group, Head Touchers Coalition. That was the name of our group. It was five of us, and one of us, my good brother, little Chris, he passed away in '99, and he was the one that got me into the group. That asked me to be a part of the group, and that kind of got me started down the journey that I'm on now. And I'm always going to be eternally grateful to him, and always miss him and always hold him in a special place in my heart. Um, but I started then with them and that was when I learned how to produce and make beats. Um, started recording then, and we used to record in this studio called Heliocentric Studio in in Kent, Ohio. That was the name of the studio. And then, ironically, I learned what that word actually means later on. But I just thought it was a cool word. Now, but with the whole thing in 2006, what really got me close to God, that was part of it. But anyway, whole nother story. So I wrote a book.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, that was the name of the studio, and yeah, we would go there and record, and I ended up the group broke up, and I left the group, and I continued recording on my own, and then I would go to these open mic performances at this club. Uh, when I'm about to say something, I forget what it's called. Right when I'm about to say it. But there's this club in Akron, Ohio, and they would have on Sunday nights. They'd have these open mics for people to come out and perform. And there was a record label, local independent label, was called First Instinct Records, and they had a clothing company called Player Instinct Clothing Company, or Player Instinct Sportswear. And their signature were these football jerseys that kind of looked like the Denver Broncos jerseys,
Yeah.
and they were dope. They were really dope. But that was their signature, thing. And everybody in Akron, would have one. Everybody saw them in Akron, and they were a pretty big independent. It was two big independent companies in Akron at the time, record labels at the time, and I was slowly starting to become aware of it. I didn't have any aspiration to sign with either one of them. I just was trying to make it. And I remember I went to one of the open mics and I performed and got a crazy response from the crowd because Akron is gangster rap central. It's gangster rap. It's everybody's a gangbanger or whatever. And I was a lyricist, punchlines and all of this and wordplay. And so I got a crazy reaction from the crowd. Well, one of the owners of the label was there. And he came up to me. I remember he came up to me and he introduced himself. And I was like, oh, wow. So I had demo CDs. My first wife and I made like 20 or 30 demo CD copies because I had like a 14-song CD or whatever. And so I gave him one. I said, oh, here's my CD. I said, here's my name, numbers in there. If you like it, let me know, whatever. I didn't expect to hear from him. Sure enough, if I remember correctly, about a week or two later, they hit me up. They called me, and they were like, we would like to meet with you. And I told my first wife, what? So I remember we went to their office, this beautiful office in Akron, and we went to the office, and they told me, like, you're different. You're very different from what we normally do. We would like to sign you to our label. And I was like, oh, I'm my first one. I'm not gonna deal. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was crazy. I haven't even thought about this in years. And I still had the contract. I kept it. I don't personally have it. I got to ask my parents if they still have it. But I kept the contract for years. I kept because it was my first ever contract and first record deal. And yeah, so I ended up signing with this label, and that was, and then the music journey started.
Oh, dope. So when did you start doing Christian hip hop?
Christian hip hop started 2009. So when I signed with that label that was 2001, I started recording. I started, working on an album. The album was never released with the label. We just ended up having some problems. There were some issues with one of my label mates and I, who were really good friends, and some things that went on with him and my ex-wife. Yeah. So I ended up leaving the label and trying to pursue this. I had a couple of close calls with some execs from some major labels, and did a bunch of showcases, and drove all over the place trying to get a record deal, trying to get another one. And then I ended up working with one of the producers from that first label. We became friends, and then I moved to Florida and I started wrestling, and I was focusing on wrestling full time. And then in 2009, when I had that spiritual awakening, then I remember literally praying to God. I'm like, God, help me find music that sounds like the music I'm listening to, but it's Christian music. Like, it just, please, like, help me find it. Like, just, and I will listen to that. And I remember, this is when iTunes became a thing. And I remember sitting on my second ex-wife's laptop and I sat on iTunes, and I didn't even know how to use it. And I just put in Christian rap and then gospel rap. I just in the search, and then all these names came up, and I was like, oh, wow. So I just went down the line and just listened to everyone I could find. And first one I heard was Derek Minor when he was pro, his album Redemption. That was literally the first Christian rap that I heard then. Wow. But I was introduced to Christian rap when I was a kid, though. My mother, she gave me a CD, a tape of this rap group called the Soldiers for Christ, SFC, Soldiers for Christ. This was back when I was a kid. And I actually met his name was Soup the Chemist. I actually met one of the members of that group a couple of years ago. And it's funny, like, and we're very cool. We talk online, but it was really, like, it was cool meeting him too. Like, bro, I was given one of your tapes when I was a kid, but I didn't know any better. I listened to it. It didn't have an effect on me until later. But in 2009, I dug in, man. I listened to Redemption front to back. I listened to every one of Derek Minor. I was like, it's the first, I just listened. That's all I listened to. And then I found Lecrae's album, Rehab. This is right when he put out. No, I found Rebel, his album Rebel, and then right after that, then he put out Rehab. I'm like, oh, he's got a new album, so I listened to that. Listened to Rehab like nonstop, back and forth. And then there was another artist named Dwayne Triumph, who's from England, and he had an album called 777 Mark of the Peace. And crazy name, but the album was incredible. It is incredible. Like, he's an incredible rapper, and it's amazing and not bigger than, but those are the three albums I found. And then from there, I kept searching. Then I discovered Bizzle and Bumps Inc. And I discovered them from Bumps Inc.'s mixtapes, who is Mark James. And then I started seeing the God Over Money logo. I'm like, that's cool. Like, whoa, like, how do you God over money? Like, that's dope. You know what I'm saying? And so I started using it as my screensaver and all of that. I didn't realize it was a record label. And then the more research I did and I started discovering Bizzle's music, I'm like, oh man, I want to be with them. That's who I want to be with, God Over Money. Like that's where I want to be. And man, and then when I was at the church, our crossover church is the name of the church, and our Urban D, Pastor Tommy Kalanden, who's the
Yeah.
pastor, he and I were like very close friends. And I remember when I went to that church, my second ex-wife, and I went to that church, I introduced myself, and I was still with WW at the time. I told him that I've been doing music for years and listened to my music, and he was receptive and supportive from day one.
Wow.
He let me perform at the church. I had no music out. I had no, people knew who I was from wrestling. They didn't know I did music, but he would let me perform at the church. He just showed me so much love from start. And and he was like, all right, so you want to do this independently because he had done it for years. Like he told me about TuneCore and CD Baby and things like that. He just gave me the game basically. And so it took me a while, but I started to, things happened in 2009. I got divorced again in 2011, went through depression.
Hey, what's going on, man? It's Dennis Haley. I am the author of the playbook, The Art of Dreaming. Just want to say a special thank you to Kelly Cole and the Publishing Advantage Group team. Man, they were with me from day one until the time I finished, and still with me to this day. What a blessing to have them be with me and to walk me through this journey and to be a part of this journey. They have been nothing but class acts, and they know what they're talking about. And just again, it is a blessing to be a part of this team and for them to guide me down the path to success. So thank you for everything that you have done. I look forward to many more projects with you guys and continue to be a blessing to many. Thank you.
All right. So how did you meet Bizzle and get down with God Over Money?
2020, Dayton started Menace. I can't put you down with God Over Money, but I started my own label. I want to put you down with my label. I said, I'm down. Let's go. Let's roll. Whatever you're doing, I'm behind you. Let's go. And so he put me down with Menace in 2020, early 2020. So, just like July or something. He called me and said, hey, that's so, okay, cool. And I'm in the middle of a Target. And he said, so I talked to Bizzle. I said, yo, okay. I said, I think we're going to go ahead and split some. I was like, what? I went down and cried and worshiped. In the middle of this Target, man, Dayton called me. Like, we talked for about 45 minutes. I hung up the phone and just got on my knees and just started thanking, like Jesus, like just crying and just like in the middle of people were looking at me. And this crazy thing is because of how crazy things were during that time period, nobody thought it was weird. Everybody started like congratulating. Like it was like people were happy, people were clapping. Like it was the craziest, like a moment in a movie almost. Like everybody wanted something to be happy about, and they saw somebody celebrating something, so they started celebrating it with me. Like it was a crazy moment.
No.
And yeah, man, that's how that relationship was born.
That's dope, man. All right, couple more questions, man. I'm gonna let you out of here. What was
Yes,
it
sir.
like to finally hold your book in your hand when you held it in your hand?
Lifelong dream, man. Lifelong dream. My whole life, I've been told you should write a book. You should write a book. You should write a book. You've been through so much. You should write a book. And I at first, thought about it. I'm like, yeah, that would be cool. I probably should. Then after a while, I started thinking maybe I should write a book. And then in 2020, my good friend JC Perez, I was brainstorming, trying to figure out like, what do I need to do? Like, what do I do? I got to get out of this. I was sleeping in a truck during a lockdown. You know what I'm saying? And he's like, yo, you've been talking about this book, man. Start writing the book. I'm like, how? What do I do? He said, just write down notes. Just start writing it, and just pray over it. Just start writing the book, and then, God will give someone to you that will be able to put those words on the pages. And he just kept pushing me. So I said, okay. So I just started praying over it, and God put the people in place. He literally put the people in place because these are relationships I would have never been able to find without, divine intervention. And I remember Christmas. I got back home from Christmas in December, this past December, and it was a big box in front of my door. I'm like, I didn't order anything from Amazon. I'm like, oh, this is heavy. And I remember dragging it into my kitchen, and I cut it open. I was like, what? Like, man, I picked it up and I carried I got not one of the books for sale. I hate when words escape me. It's just like the version that's not for sale.
The
Like
proof, your proof copy.
Proof. Yeah, I carried that thing with me everywhere. I carried that book, bro. I carried it with me everywhere I went, man. I would just sit and look at it and man, just looking at it like, wow, God, you were listening. Like it's evidence, that he was listening. If no one buys the book, it's evidence that God was listening. And that is worth more than just being able to flip through it, read it, look at it. It was the vision that I always wanted. I wanted it to be called Manic On Fire. Like I released a project called Manic On Fire under my old name in 2018, and my dream was always to release both the album and the book together. So when the opportunity came to write the book, I'm like, I'm doing the book. That's what I'm doing. Yeah. It's a dream come true, man. Being able to look at it and see all of the years, man, just all of the years, everything I went through, being able to look at it and hold it in my hand, it was therapeutic, man, cathartic to just get it out.
That's awesome, man. Last question. What was it like working with Books for Athletes, man? What was it like working with us?
Amazing. I loved it so much. This is my first experience, and you made it so easy. Like just the coaching period, working with the ghostwriter, working with Dr. Oliver, man, just sitting and just going through the calls and talks and everything, and just emailing back and forth. And you guys were just so easy to work with, and with all of even the last minute changes and different things, like you did it, no question. Like it was no problem. Like it was just, yeah, it was. And I know initially it took me a while to get the ball rolling because it was supposed to start like probably almost 6 months earlier than we got started. And partially it was me because I'm like, is this real? Like, is this? And I was going through a lot too at the time. I'm like, am I really about to write a book? Like I wasn't, I didn't process. I couldn't process it. Then once we got started, I'm like, I'm really writing a book. Like, this is crazy. So we all of 2023, we just, all last year, literally entire last year. And yeah, you guys have been wonderful. I'm so grateful. And I can't wait to do the next one. But yeah, you guys have been great. You guys have been amazing.
Would you recommend other athletes come to us to get their books done?
Absolutely. Already have, and I will continue to. Absolutely.
Appreciate that, my brother. All right. Tell the people where they can follow you, where they can get the book, where they can get the new project, anything you want to lead the people with before we get out of here.
Yes, sir. You can find me on all social media platforms at Monster Tarver. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I don't do TikTok dances, but TikTok, all of that, YouTube. The album, The War of Art, is available on all platforms where you can find music. Debuted at number 13 on the iTunes Top 100 Hip Hop charts in the U.S. And I found out recently it debuted at number 7 on the iTunes Top 100 Hip Hop charts in England. So like in other countries, which is also a dream come true. Have a charting album. Just was a part of a movie that just got released on the 12th called Texas Twister. It is available on Amazon Prime and Vudu right now. I don't know where else it would be available, but it's a movie called Texas Twister. I play a sheriff in that movie, and that was a dream come true, first movie role. Like, so the seeds that I grinded to plant, they're slowly starting to sprout leaves, so, but yeah, that's, and, I'm working on the next album, working on, continuously working.
That's good, my man. All right, man. I appreciate it. And the book is on Amazon right now. So go ahead and get your copy of the book as well.
Yes.
All right. Good stuff, brother. Listen, thanks so much for checking out this episode of the Books for Athletes podcast. Do me a favor, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode. We want to help more athletes tell their story. We want to help more athletes get their story out. So if you could support this podcast, all I need you to do is like, comment, share, and please subscribe to my channel so we can grow on YouTube and start monetizing this channel. All right. If you prefer to listen, we're on all podcast listening platforms as well. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Wherever you are, please like, subscribe, comment, and please share this episode with someone. Now, I appreciate you. I'll see you on the next one.